Sonny, good morning and thank you so much for joining us to answer these few questions. It's been an absolute amazing few weeks watching you on All That Glitters. It's lovely to see you develop.
Thank you, I really appreciate it, and thanks for having me here.
You're more than welcome. So Sonny, what made you apply for All That Glitters, and really what inspired you to take part?
Well, initially I had received loads of messages from other jewellers and saying you should apply for this, and I completely put it off, to be completely honest, and I didn't apply straight away. It was kind of something that I wouldn't normally do, and especially because of my background, I was kind of like self-taught. I was in my own bubble with it, with sort of making and designing. And I was kind of like, oh my God, BBC Two, I just get ripped to shreds. But then the producers actually messaged me themselves, and they was like, you should apply for this, and I actually left it to the last day of the deadline. I think the deadline was at 12 a.m. and I applied at like 10 p.m. the night before. I was like, yeah, I've just got to do this. And I think it was the idea that there's nothing to lose. No negative could come from it in my eyes.
Yeah, it's the same. There's been, everybody who we've interviewed has always said, oh, I wasn't going to do it, I wasn't going to do it. And you know, family, friends have been saying, yeah, you got to do it, you got to do it. And they go, no, 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 no. And it's always the last minute. Everyone seems to sort of like leave it until the last like hour, 2 hours before the deadline.
I think it must be that kind of the age-old thing with creatives, is that it's like that imposter syndrome. You sort of just think to yourself, there's no way that I could compete, because it's also very insular what we do to a degree. Not for everyone, but to a lot, it's very insular. And to put yourself on the chopping block, so to speak, for the whole world to dissect what you're doing, it takes something sort of out of the ordinary for you to apply for it. But I'm so glad I did. So glad I did. I'd be a fool not to have done.
And I think it's the same with us creatives, is the fact that we see our work day in, day out. We get so used to it, but it takes somebody else looking in from the outside, looking at it to say, hang on a second, that's pretty good. You should go ahead, you should go ahead and do this. It's very hard, I think, for us to go, do you know what, I'm good enough. I can take part, I can compete. It's other people telling you, no, you are good enough.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's kind of like you, especially on like Instagram and that side of things, is jewelers follow loads of other jewelers, and you typically follow amazing work that you admire and you inspire to do. So you're kind of like, you always feel like you're trying to achieve something more than what you're already doing. So you kind of lose sight of how far or what you're actually doing. And I think same when we were filming, you kind of like all these talented jewelers, Shaun and Solange, are like two of the biggest dogs in the game. But from someone who's not in jewellery, not in the trade, they're like, whoa, that's amazing. So we're hypercritical.
Okay, so the time limits for the challenges seemed really tough. How did you manage to plan the projects to finish in time? Did you build in any extra time should something go not quite right?
The timing was by far the hardest part. And I think normally we, in our day-to-day lives in the workshop, we typically would set the deadline, the time frame that we work towards. But I think the hardest part was finding the balance between design and time. So you're trying to push, you're basically trying to milk the time for everything that you can get. Me being me, I didn't plan for things to go wrong. Silly. But I was kind of like, if you're going to do it, just do it. Try your best. And if something goes wrong, think on your feet and work with it.
I suppose anything could go wrong, couldn't it, really? It's just one of those things that, yeah, even if you've done it 100 times, something could still go wrong.
100%. And the environment that we was in, it kind of, it lends itself for things to go wrong. So you've got, like I said before, Shaun and Solange breathing down your neck, and you're like, oh my God, I really want to impress these people. And oh, how am I coming across on camera? Do I look silly? So you're kind of like, that's the perfect storm for things to go wrong.
So what did it feel like when your little golden egg was chosen on episode 4? What's that feel like? You're there with all the other jewelers, and you're all going me, and it was you. How did that feel?
It was amazing. I think I think I said it on the show that's for jewelers. That's what we do it for. You do it, especially when it's linked to such an emotionally driven story as it was. You kind of like there's an extra layer of specialness because that they see what you tried to portray, and they completely sort of resonated with it, and you don't get better. That's what we do it for.
When somebody comes to you, you make it for them. But in the show, they've got a choice, and that would never happen in real life, would it?
Exactly. And I feel like the bespoke pieces I do in day to day people come to me, like you said, for a specific look. So generally they would say, I love this, what you've done, but can you tweak it to this, da, 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 da. So the base is generally my own work. Whereas this is a complete sort of swing in the dark, because all we have is a brief. We don't know the person. We haven't sort of liaised with them. So all we're doing is we're just plucking things from the air, from what we think would suit. And so it gives that extra degree of pleasure.
If you had a chance to complete the challenges again, would you do anything differently?
By far, episode 3, the alternative materials, that a graft beyond belief, especially the bespoke. I just completely hashed up the brief. Halfway through, I just thought, oh yeah, feathers. So and it was only because they was on, and then I just stuck them on there, and but it's because they was on the shelf behind me. I was sort of looking around. It was either denim or feathers that was on the shelf, and I thought I can't put denim on it. So I thought feathers, why not? And I think that'd be the only one I'd do differently, and I actually think about it more.
What made you interested in making jewellery and pursuing it as a career?
So it wasn't jewellery at first specifically. It was more the umbrella of a creative career. So I Googled creative jobs, and then the few that came up was like, it was like an artist, random things as well, like an architect and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, no chance, no way. I couldn't draw, definitely couldn't be an architect. So obviously you got to study. And then jewelry was like number 4 or 5 on the list. And I sort of thought, what's not to like, kind of thing. You work with, obviously this was me being completely naive. Oh yeah, it's always shiny things, and it's always pretty things, and it's always very nice. So I thought, why not? Let's just go for it. Googled it, sort of thought, okay, there's different ways to go about it. So I tried to go the traditional route with the apprenticeships, etc. And I was a bit old. I say old, I was 21, but for an apprenticeship, that's fairly old. So I was kind of like, okay, and I just got pied from every single time I tried to get in touch with someone, and then just ran with it. Books and YouTube. I never had the foresight that it would become a career. I just sort of thought this could be something that could potentially be a career, but if not, it's a hobby that I can come to in the evenings, take my mind off the job that I didn't like at the time. And here we are, just so happened to turn into it, and I'm rolling with the punches.
Find that, don't they? It starts off as a hobby and it just becomes something they want to do all the time. We hear that quite a lot, yeah.
I think it's when something's a hobby first, you're doing it for free. You're not doing it for a monetary gain. So you look at it and you're like, okay, I'm willing to spend every waking hour I can. It becomes like an insatiable desire that you just have to do something to it, which I look as a byproduct of that, is that you subsequently become good because you're spending so much time on it. You become good at something, people like it, and then you end up selling it.
And then you think, hang on a second, we can actually do something with this and make some money on something that I'm actually really enjoying what I'm doing.
100%. And you sort of like it, it's almost a no-brainer. And obviously you add the pressure of it becoming to pay your bills, etc. But there's no greater privilege than being able to do something that you enjoy daily.
So what impact do you think the show will have on the industry as a whole?
I think the impact on the industry is going to be nothing but positive. I mean, we're not even it's not even finished yet. And you're hearing of jewellers who aren't even in the show, people sort of coming up to them saying, oh, I'm looking for independent jewellers. So you've got people who aren't even involved in it benefiting from the fact that just the general public's perception of jewellery's changed. I think there was always this sort of mystery behind it, and it was kind of like people just think it appeared from nowhere. And I think now it's highlighted that there are different avenues to get jewellery, and things like your Argos, your H. Samuel, that's fine. It's horses for courses, but as long as you know what you're getting. And I think now it's just opened people's eyes that there is an artisanal side to it, and you can support an independent, and it's not always what you perceive it to be, like a big company, or 9 times out of 10 it's just a one-person band tinkering away.
Yeah, it's nice because people's conceptions of buying jewelry as you go along, and you go, oh, I'll have that one there. But that's not the case now. I think the program has brought to light, well, actually, we can go to the little small independent and we can have a chat, and they can actually come up with something that I want in the style that I want, that's going to have far more meaning and memories than just having that one off the shelf.
People can have exactly what they want. They haven't got to...
Make do.
Yeah. Because we like to take some photos, don't we? If we remember, we take some pictures of you making commissions, because that will add value, and the customers always love that, don't they? Our clients really like to see and have those. Because
we all do this behind closed doors. It's not out there. It's not like the program is showing in front of all the cameras, but we all do this behind closed doors in dingy basements under the stairs, and no one sees what we do. So they come in, they say, "Can you make?"
His bench isn't under the stairs.
But you know what I mean. Someone says, "Can you do this? Can you do this?" Yeah, here are the drawings. Right, come back, and then you go, "There it is," and they go, "Wow!" But they don't see what actually goes on, how dirty everyone's fingers are, the things that happen, the pressure that you're under. Not even if you're being timed, but you are under so much pressure. With tomorrow, with the stone, melting the setting around it. There's just so much pressure involved within the process. People don't see that.
No, and I think that's where it's like the perfect place for socials like Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and things like that, because it gives you the perfect platform which is accessible to the person who's making it, and it's instant contact with your customers or your followers or whatever, and people are like, oh my god, this is amazing, I can literally see this person on this mini telly. And you kind of build, it's like the perfect platform to build trust and a relationship with people without having to be there.
And that's where social media really come into its own, hasn't it? 100%,
invaluable.
Yeah, because you do an awful lot of stories throughout the day on the process.
Yeah, and I think it was because I sort of, easy to become isolated, and you just end up, it's easy to just sit in your workshop, making away, oh yeah, another finished piece, let me work on to the next one, and just leaving it at that. But I think you could have the most amazing, let's say, product or whatever, but if no one sees it, what's the point of it being there? Because that's what you're doing it for at the end of the day. And social gives you the idea to show you the background to the piece. It's not just the finished article. There's weeks or months before that. You actually spend more time designing, planning, sourcing than you do making it.
Exactly.
And that's an enjoyable part of the process. Socials can also be very sort of disheartening, because you can put in a lot of effort into something. I mean, I've posted a piece I've made and I'm really, really pleased with it, and it's just like dead as a dodo.
The same thing happens, and I don't know why.
Bloody hell. Post a photo of me and Rudy and it gets like thousands of likes. I'm like...
But that's what people want to see. They want to know you, don't they? And they want to know your story, and they want to know what your life and your lifestyle. And that's part of what you're selling, I think, isn't it? When you're a maker, they just want to buy a little bit of that.
Sonny, what challenges did you encounter working in such an unfamiliar environment, such as the tools and the equipment?
It was At first, I think the first few challenges, it was really much a case of trying to find our bearings. And I think the tools itself was actually a joy because they were brand spanking new. It's like we had the tiered rolling mills and brand spanking new tools, torches, files, etc. So it's kind of, at first we was all a bit like, whoa, these are all brand new. And it made me sort of realize, damn, I need new files, I need new this, new that. And then you then sort of slip into it after a few challenges. And then you kind of, it's amazing how much pressure makes you adapt to something so quickly. It's very much that sort of slightly different, but like fight or flight. You're kind of like, okay, I have to adapt or I'm not going to progress within the show. So it was kind of like that was the first hurdle to get over, was just getting your bearings, and then you sort of end up rolling with it. I quite enjoyed it. I thought they were great, all the tools.
On the subject of tools, what tool can you not manage without?
There's two, but I'll say one is by far my rolling mill, by a country mile. I think other things you can kind of sort of get away with that you don't necessarily need. They're more of a luxury and they make life a little bit easier. But rolling mill, 110%, specifically my Durston mill, and also my Smith Little Torch. That changed the game, those two alone. And you can, all the other tools like ring benders and ring stretchers and sizes, they just make life easier. But those two are my necessities.
Because you can adapt, can't you? But you can't get something that resembles a rolling mill that does the job of a rolling mill.
No, it is so specific. But what it does is, well, it changes the game, because you don't, I think as well, I looked at it from like a financial perspective. It's expensive buying different gauge wires, different thickness sheets and all the rest of it, because and it also requires a lot of planning, especially if you've got a few pieces lined up. Whereas if you just, you can work out the weight, buy the grain, just make your own. All right, it's a bit more labor intensive, and I also think the customer likes that they've seen it turn from these small pebbles, grains, into something which is like, whoa, yeah, alchemy.
It is amazing, and it still gets me every single time. You melt the metal down, whether it be grain or clients' scrap, sentimental jewellery. You melt it, and you have that lovely little massive rolling metal, and then you pour it out. I still get a kick from all that, and then you can turn that into something brand spanking new that's never been made before. It still gets me every time.
Freedom, I suppose, isn't it, as well?
It is, yeah. You're not restricted to anything. You can do anything you want.
Yeah, and and like back to the tools, the mill is by far, like I said, you just can't do it without it. I mean, to put it into perspective, when I didn't have one and I first started, I was so tight with money. I was like, there's no way I'm buying different gauge wires. So I'd melt the grain and forge to 1.5 wire. It was like absolute ridiculous. I recommend nobody does that. Getting the mill was kind of like, oh my God, I can actually just make it instead of buying it. I was like, bloody hell. They are expensive, don't get me wrong. But like you said, it pays for itself the minute you've made the first piece and you're like, I can't live without it. Yeah. You don't even look at the money. You just like,
that's it. It's got to be done, isn't it?
So what was your favourite moment?
My favourite moment throughout the whole process, I think it's a toss-up between the client choosing my bespoke piece and the friendships I made. I don't know if that's a moment or an experience, but those two, I can't choose between the two. The friendships I've made with the other jewellers is unbelievable. And the bespoke piece as well being chosen is, like I said before, it's what we do it for. And to have that chosen by the customer for such a special reason in the story, you can't compare the feeling. It's amazing.
Now, Talking of tools and techniques, what technique would you most like to demonstrate, and which technique would you not like to demonstrate in front of people?
Most like to demonstrate technique-wise would probably be forging. I find that super satisfying, very therapeutic, and fun. I mean, wielding a hammer, there's nothing more sort of rock and roll or intimate than that, I feel. Not to demonstrate, by far, would be enameling. I mean, my God, the unpredictability and the small margin for error, it could be an absolute calamity within seconds.
Was Dan found out?
Yes, Dan did find out. I remember seeing that. I knew it happened, obviously, because I was there, but we were watching it, and I was sort of thinking to myself, like, what is going on? What are you doing? He's sort of washing his hands. It was brilliant. It was so funny. Obviously, not brilliant because it went wrong, but it was so funny.
What material do you most like working with?
Oh, gold, 100%. Specifically, 18 or 22 by a country mile. Delicious and buttery. Simple as that. I'm a massive fan of contrast and saturation of colours. So 22 specifically is like, my God, you have to be specific in what you're working because it's very soft. But if you facilitate for that, the colour and the process of making it, I think 18 is the perfect blend between the colour and wearability, as in from a long-term perspective, as in its strength. Perfect. It's beautiful. Nothing more satisfying.
It is.
What about stones? What's your favourite stone?
By a mile, sapphire. I think the mix of colours that are available and the strength, as in it's super tough. You can make something which would be an engagement ring, or you can go down the cocktail ring route, and there's no blur, and you can also get them relatively affordable. I mean, people think sapphire, you think, my God, it's got to be unbelievable in price, but you can actually get some really reasonable ones. So you kind of get the best of both worlds.
Now, some people think that Shaun and Solange, they seem stern. Do you think that's a fair appraisal? Obviously, we've got to realise that the workshops are potentially dangerous places. But what are they like in real life?
They were so nice.
Yeah.
So nice. And when it first sort of aired, I was really shocked. And especially the reception that they were receiving. I was like, my God, people are brutal. But yeah, and I was kind of like, I didn't really get it. I couldn't comprehend it because they, like I said, I'd say 10% of what is filmed actually makes it. And they were so encouraging, so nice and helpful. And yeah, they were just lovely. Really, really nice people. The really tough thing as well, which I've thought about quite a bit with it, is that to step out of your comfort zone and to go into something as sort of extraordinary as telly is it's a big ask.
One thing we get asked a lot by aspiring jewellers is, where do you start if you're looking to forge a career or even start a hobby in goldsmith or metalsmithing? I
think if I talk from my experience of it, is have an idea of something that you want to make and buy the stuff required for that. A lot of people think that you need to go all in, spend tens of thousands of pounds and all the posh, fancy gear and the tools and straight into gold and diamonds, but it's not the case. I first started, I would buy, I just went on eBay, to be completely honest, and I bought, I wanted to make a ring, so I bought a mandrel, a rawhide mallet, a little creme brulee torch. I think I got it from like Lakeland or something. I didn't go to a jewellery supplier, and just got the soldering kit from eBay. And I played with it, made rings until I got bored of them. And I thought, okay, I want to make a bangle. So I bought slightly bigger hammer, bought a bigger mandrel, and a slightly bigger torch. And that way, it's not so much of a financial burden because you're going as you go kind of thing. So it really softens the blow. But 100%, I think books and YouTube have become, and things on the internet like yourself at the bench, has been completely invaluable. It's a priceless thing because it's bringing something which was very smoke and mirrors, the trade before the internet, to the forefront and very accessible to everyone. So it doesn't need to be as expensive and scary as people think.
Now you can look back on what you've done and how you started. Would you still do the same again? Or would you think, hang on a second, I want to learn to solder, what night classes are out there? Perhaps I should do them, or would you do exactly the same all over again?
I think I would. I wouldn't change much. The only thing that I would change about what I didn't do and what I would do was to become more involved within the community. I think that's invaluable, not only from a learning perspective, if you want to pick someone's brains about something, but also just from a social standpoint. It can become very lonely and frankly quite depressing, stuck at home. You're not making sales. You're like, bloody hell, it's cost me an arm and a leg. I'm on my Jack Jones all day. And I think getting involved within the community can really give an extra motivation and perspective. And it's inspiring as well.
When you say community, you mean via things like forums and Facebook and that sort of thing?
Exactly. Facebook, Instagram, things as well, like the Goldsmith Centre. You can join up for free, become a member there. I think just immerse yourself within the community itself. And I think that's invaluable. And that's the one thing that I would change. Yeah, that's all.
So talking of the future now, can you imagine focusing on one particular area of jewellery making? And do you think that the show has changed your direction when it comes to making jewellery?
I think I'll probably stick to the path that I've started on now with the fine jewellery and develop my collection through there. What it has highlighted for me, especially with fine jewellery, gold, sapphires and stuff like that, is that it's made it even more special to me. It's given me perspective, as in, it's trying to find a way to coin it. It's made it have more gravitas, and it's made me feel a lot more of an affinity towards it.
So a lot of comments from the judges were all about you jewellers having a style. How did you develop yours?
The style developed from process. So when I first started, I would forge absolutely everything because I didn't have the tools necessarily to make, like I didn't have rolling mills, etc. I didn't have the finances to be buying loads of different thickness and gauges of sheets and bezel wires and all the rest of it. So I tried to make it as simple as possible. Fire and hammer, simple as that, and just beat it into submission to the way I'd like it to be. And then as I developed into it and I started to research more about history and process and how things are actually made, I sort of discovered that this was how things was done hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. And I sort of thought, okay, I can run with this. And I sort of felt there was a link. And I didn't see it that much. I saw sort of technology and things developing from that side of things to make things quicker. I saw value in things being longer. So, and because it took so long forging things out, sheet and wire, I was like, I'd be an absolute criminal to remove that. There's no way, just out of sheer laziness, because I thought, I've spent hours putting that on. I'm not going to remove it. And then I just ran with it, kept it there. And a lot of the pieces I make, the textures and the way things look is process driven opposed to aesthetic driven. So I'm rambling now, but if I make a collet, I don't forge a collet. I would roll it out, use a collet block and punch. So I'm not going to add a texture to it because it would be contrived. Okay. Whereas I'll leave a texture around my bezel settings because I hammer set.
Yeah.
So everything's there because of the process. So it's very much a fingerprint, and that gives contrast and gives the piece layers that you wouldn't normally get if everything was from sheet and wire. if that makes sense.
So you wouldn't consider cheating and and getting a rolling mill with a nice big thick bar, and say you want to do the shank and just step roll it and then go ding, 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 ding. There we go. It would save you so much hassle and time.
You say that, but that would still be part of the process. Yeah. So if you step rolled it, so a lot of the shanks I do are heavier at the base than they are at the shoulders. Yeah. So step rolling gives you a symmetrical taper, but it would be square. Yeah. So then instead of using a draw plate, you'd forge it round. Yeah. So it's still, so you're exactly right. And it's kind of like, and that's where I've learned that you can play with it, because it's still the process. Yeah. And it's part of the journey of the piece, if that makes sense.
So how did you feel about using the square diamonds, that 1 carat diamonds? Would you have preferred a different shape, perhaps?
Princess or square diamonds are a headache, because not only do you have the time restraint and it being for a bespoke piece, it's very valuable. And those corners are very sharp and thin. So you've got that added pressure to not kill the stone.
And not to rush.
And that's the one, I think Dan mentioned it perfectly in the show, is that the one thing you don't want to rush is stone setting. If I would I have chosen another stone for my own work? Probably. Especially diamonds, I have a unrivaled love for old cut cushions. Unbelievably beautiful antique cuts, and I love the soft edges, and I feel that lends perfectly to my work. But at the same time, who don't want to work with a 1 carat diamond? Yeah, no, princess cut? Like,
yeah. As soon as they showed that, I thought, oh my gosh, you will automatically see, you automatically think they're expensive. And then how easy it is to chip. Too much pressure, as Hugo showed, you drill the hole into the claw to relieve the pressure on the tip, because one little bit of pressure just on that edge, okay, the stone's not necessarily ruined, but for the sake of what you were doing, yes, it was ruined. So the pressure and just purely on that setting, as well as everything else within the time restraints, crazy.
A massive headache, to say the least. I don't know if you noticed it, but I bead set.
Yes.
Fixed the small grains and beads I lifted. I'd done that specifically because of the lack of pressure I'm putting on the corners for the time restraint. So I was like, if I was to do that in my own studio, I would have made the setting thinner and hammer set just a square bezel. But I sort of thought to myself, I was like, okay, Sonny, you know yourself here. You're a scrambler under the best circumstances. Let's not take a hammer to this. It's very expensive. So it was kind of like a blur of function and design. And back to the earlier question of, do you sort of design for the time in mind? That was me designing for the time in mind.
Well, thank you, Sonny, for taking the time to answer our questions. You've been an absolute legend, as you say.
Thank you.
An absolute star, and we've loved watching you.
Thank you so much. It means a lot. I really appreciate that.
You're more than welcome. And keep in touch, definitely. You have a great future.
Thank you so much. It means a lot, honestly. It does. Really appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
It's just been an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Likewise.
And don't forget, you can watch BBC Two's All That Glitters. It airs on Tuesday, 8 p.m. And alternatively, you can watch it on iPlayer.